everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Sew to Grow. Today's episode is all about how to do French seams, and this is one of my favorite techniques. You can see here I've used it on the inside of my Bondi top, and it's completely encased, which means that there's absolutely no need for an overlocker or a serger. So I'm going to show you guys how you can do it at home. Sewing a French seam is extremely easy. There's just a few things you need to remember. The first is that we've always been taught when you're sewing, you put right sides together and sew. Now you kind of have to rewire your brain, because when you start doing a French seam, you have to start and you have to put wrong sides together so that the pretty side is facing out towards you. Now we're going to pin that together. And if I'm going to do a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and that's how much I want it to take up, I'm going to go to my sewing machine and I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So basically I've halved the amount of my total amount of my seam allowance, because I'm going to sew, trim, and then I'm going to sew again. So now you can see that I've gone over to my sewing machine and I've sewed a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to trim. This is very, very important, very close to the seam, so that when I fold it back on itself, that I completely cover the seam allowance. All right, so now you can see just how close I was able to get for trimming it back. Now you're going to take it, open it up, and then roll it back on itself. So what I like to do is I take both my fingers and I roll it out so that the seam sits on top, and I press. Just like that. So now I'm going to go back over to my sewing machine and sew another 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I just got back from my sewing machine and you can see I have sewn another 1/4 inch seam allowance. So let's open it up and see just how good it looks. You can see that this seam is completely encased, so there's no little furry bits hanging out. And you can't see it from the inside either. So it's just such a nice, neat, professional way to finish off your garments, clothing. I use it a lot when I'm working with voils or rayons, or things that I just want the insides to look really neat and tidy. I hope you guys really enjoyed today's quick episode. I want to do a lot more of these where it's just get in there, get out, and show you what you need to know so that you can become a better sewer and have more confidence in what you're doing. Hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I'll see you again next time. Bye!